Okay, but that's it. Tonight, we have with us Amy Masi, and she is going to, and where's my little cheat sheet, Amy? Oh my God, what did I do with it?
I don't
Amy's
know.
going
I
to teach us
send you
all.
these things. You have
I
one job.
know, I have one job. Amy is going to spend the night teaching us a little bit about watercolors and marketing watercolors. And I think you're doing this all in Photoshop, right? You're doing your watercolor in Photoshop?
Yeah. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So without further ado, I want to just turn it over to Amy and let her get started. So Amy, please take it away.
Hey, I'm glad to see you all tonight. And Danny, am I able to share my screen without like some special permission from you?
Oh, I need a special permission. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, so now you can go down to the bottom and share your screen and then choose whatever desktop or whatever application you won't do that.
Okay. All right. So
Or,
hopefully I've hidden all the things that are, not safe for work.
oh my God, there's a cat. Oh.
All right. So get somebody, let me know if you can see my screen here.
Yep, you can see this beautiful watercolor. I can see it.
Awesome. Great. So if you can't, just complain to Danny and I'm sure he'll take care of you. So,
I will take care of it.
so I'm going to be switching back from PowerPoint to Photoshop, which hopefully will go smoothly, but if it doesn't, just give me some grace. And I want to start out by telling you that I am in no way a watercolor artist. I'm not even really an artist. I'm good with computers. So that's where I'm coming from. I have no art training. I did not go to art school. My mom is a watercolor artist, but I didn't inherit anything from her. So during the COVID shutdown, I decided that I might as well learn how to do something new. And a lot of people were doing these, and so I just figured out how to do them. And I thought they make neat little gifts for clients or upsells or something. And it's actually turned out to be kind of an interesting marketing thing for me. So I'll share that with you as well. So if you have questions, unmute yourself and ask away. If I'm speaking too quickly, tell me to slow down. I am not from Maryland. I'm from Northern New York most recently, and we moved pretty quickly there. Okay, so here's what I want you to get out of this presentation. I want you to be able to locate and install the tools that you need to create these watercolors, and I have links for you. I've converted this to PDFs and sent the PDF to Danny so he can distribute that. I'm going to show you how to import and set up the images and how to manipulate the layers once you get the whole watercolor rendering thing done, and how to use clipping masks for a final effect, and how to source, I'll show you the sources that I use for printing and framing, and share with you some of my marketing ideas to drive the business. All right, so here's the link page. You can take a shot of it if you want, or just wait for the PDFs that Danny sends you. Hopefully we all have Photoshop in some form, 2019 or 2020. You can go to the Adobe Watercolor Actions page and download these, and there's special instructions for Photoshop 2020. The default is 2019. You can get watercolor brushes from DeviantArt. I grabbed those because they were part of something else that I was using, and they're fun and interesting watercolor brushes. And there's a tutorial for a no paint kind of watercolor effect that essentially just is a couple of filters that is applied over over your image, and it's okay. It doesn't really look like it just kind of applies like a watercolor overlay. And then I use some clipping masks that I got from Etsy. Here's the link at the bottom that I've used with some success, and I'll show you an example of the one that I've used. So any questions moving forward? Nope. Okay.
No, I don't see any questions, sorry.
Okay, shout them out. All right, so the starting images. So the images that you use for these watercolors, it can be very forgiving. The top image is a cat that I took from a session, and the image to the right of that is the watercolor that I made from that image. The image on the bottom is a cell phone image that someone sent me, and the image on the right is the watercolor image that I created from that. And I'm not printing these really big. I've gone 8x8, and the cell phone images the watercolors look absolutely fantastic. What you can do is enhance a little bit before you edit. You can see here that the dog's eyes are pretty dark. So I lightened that area up in Photoshop. I made sure to enhance this little highlight here. And there's some other tricks that I can show you to make sure that the image looks its best. And once you get finished with it, you can duplicate your original image, place it on top, add a mask, and then kind of add in details to make it look a little bit less abstract. All right, so cell phone images are fine. Any image that you take from a session is also fine. Okay, so pre-production. What I do is I import the image into Photoshop. I convert it to 300 PPI and resize. If it's an image for one of my sessions, it's going to be enormous, so I size it down. I've settled on 5x5 or 8x8s for these. And if they don't come in as sRGBs, I save them, convert to the profile sRGB, and then I save them out as a PSD file. I'm bad with saving, in that I save everything. I have copies and copies and copies of stuff just in case I need to go back. Okay, so pretty easy to set up. I'm going to go through this step, this pre-production step on the slide. Then I'm going to switch to Photoshop and show you exactly how I do it. And then we're going to come back to the PowerPoint. So in order to set this up, the best way that I found, and I spent several days experimenting with it, was to select the subject and create a new layer. However you are most used to doing that. You can do it with a lasso tool, you can do it with a select subject tool, however you do that. There's millions of ways to do it in Photoshop. And then place it on a new layer by hitting Command J. So I use this most often on cell phone photos for pets or people or subjects with undesirable backgrounds. So if somebody sends you a cell phone picture of their dog, and I'm a pet photographer, it's got like kids in the background or a fence in the background or something, it's just really easy to cut the dog out and put it on a transparent background and then add your own background colors. And to do that, I create a new blank layer for the background. I choose 3 to 5 dominant colors from the subject. I add them to swatches and rename them. And then I just grab one of the watercolor brushes and start painting a background on the empty layer. And it looks ugly, it looks horrible, but don't worry, you're just placing color there for the program, the actions to grab some of that color. Before I go ahead, I select the subject layer and the painted background layer, and I merge those layers. So again, it looks ugly, all right? So let me switch to Photoshop here, and I've already imported the photo that I'm going to use. Okay, so hopefully you should all see my Photoshop. Yes?
Yes, I see it.
Okay,
Yep.
good. Thank you. Thank you. Participation points. Okay, so this is from a session, and the print was wonderful. I did a triplex from this, and owners were thrilled, blah, blah, blah. So I've got the cat selected here. I'm going to get rid of everybody's faces. Okay. All right, I've got the cat selected here. I'm just going to quick make a background copy of this. And I'm going to go into image size here. And so I've actually already resized this to about 8x8, 300. But if I hadn't, that's what I do. And then I convert it to profile, sRGB, and I've already done that. So we're good to go there. So the next thing that I would do is use the select tool, and I'd either select it kind of with the lasso like this. You don't have to be terribly accurate, or you could do select subject and see how well that goes. Let's try that. It's actually not bad. I'm looking at it. Yeah, it's not bad. I might extend this. It looks like the cat actually kind of extends down here. Give it a little bit here. It actually does a pretty good job here. I'm not going to worry too much about those whiskers. They're going to disappear. So you don't need to be super, like, you're not cutting it out and putting it on a different background as a photograph. This is absolutely perfectly fine here. So if we hit Command J, we can pop it onto a new layer, and hopefully you all can see that. I don't know what the command is on a PC. Somebody who knows PCs could chime in with that. That would be great. Okay, so now we have the cat on a new layer. So we can see that it's kind of ugly looking, but it's really okay. Okay, so now I'm going to add a new layer, and we'll put this. I'll name this background, and I'm going to choose. So we have a really nice rich brown here. I think I have these already. That's the dog photo. Cat black, cat dark brown, cat light brown. Okay, but if I hadn't had those already, on the background layer here, I can choose one of these colors. All right, and I can add that to the swatches and name it cat dark brown, whatever, name it whatever you want so you can refer back to it, and then hit OK, and you can see it's down here on the bottom. So we can start with that, and I'll pick a brush here, and I've got a bunch of brushes, watercolor brushes, which might lead you to believe that I was talented in using brushes and painting in Photoshop, and that is absolutely not true. So here's the McBad brushes. Some of them are mixer brushes, some of them are just regular brushes. What do I have on here now? Oops. Turn this on. So we can see the cat on here. Okay, so that's a big blob of brown here. I don't know if I want. Nope, I want it more. So the object here is to create color in some kind of harmony with the colors that are in the subject. Oops. I'm just going to increase the brush size here. So it actually kind of looks like I know what I'm doing, but we know better. Oops, that's going right over the cat. Why is that going over the cat?
Because that layer is above the cat.
Oh, that's right. Sorry. Thank you. Missing a step. Thank you. All right. So generally, I'd like to kind of remember where the light was coming from. And it's coming from a window to the left. Here, the cat is looking towards the window, and you can see that highlight in the catchlight in the cat's eye. So I'm gonna add more dark over here. And yeah, it looks horrible. Let's actually, you can add some lighter tones here. You can vary the opacity here. This is, you just really kind of have to experiment here. Let me see. I had some green for the cat's eye. Let me see if I can sample that. Not going anywhere. I don't see it going in. Oh, it's on the wrong layer. That's right. There we go. So go back to the brush, pick up a little green from the cat's eye, and that's not it. It's weird. Oh yeah, it is. It's just kind of mixing.
Hey, Amy, do you know what attributes make a brush a watercolor brush? Like, does Adobe have a certain formula for that?
I don't know. You have now exceeded my knowledge about watercolor brushes and brushes in general. So I just know that they are like Adobe, like your Photoshop should come with them. If you look at some of these, they are. Let me see if I can increase the size on these. I'm not. They're like I don't know who makes them. They're a lot of them have a lot of space in between them. So I have no idea. Before I say something that is really stupid, I have no idea. All right, so again, this looks like it's a mess, but let's combine these layers here. I'll merge them. And so now we have our starting point. And I don't know, I might have put some more green in there on the one that I did. So let's go back to, okay, so now we're down to the merge layers here. All right. So there are two actions when you download and install this action. There's a setup action and there's a watercolor artist action. The setup action is where you select the area that you want the action to be applied to. And you try and select the subject at 100% opacity. Again, you can be sloppy. And then I usually change the opacity of the brush to anywhere between 5 and 15%. And this you have to experiment with. I do a lot of like undoing and redoing here. And then I paint over the rest of the background. So this tells the program to pick up some of these colors. The degree of opacity will determine how much of the background is picked up in the painting process. And once you complete the rendering process, you have like 40 layers to go through. And you have to kind of experiment and see what each layer does and modify that layer, the opacity or the blending mode to get an effect that is kind of your style. So, all right, so let's head back to Photoshop here. All right, so way down on the bottom here, I have the setup and I'm gonna run it. And that just kind of preps the image, and nothing exciting happens here. It's instantaneous. And they want you to, oh, you know what? Photoshop is acting up for me. They want you to use a brush. That's way too big. Maybe 100, 200 pixels, or yeah. And paint the areas that you want the effect to be applied to. And you can see here that I'm being pretty sloppy here. And then I'll usually just paint in the rest here. This is all at 100% opacity. So now we have our cat rather roughly selected. And if you suffer from OCD and really need neat edges, you can go back in and be very specific in your selection here and erase all of this messiness here. Oops. And I'm not working with my tablet here, so I'm just doing this very roughly.
I got it before, but
Everybody okay? Do I need to slow down or back up?
No, I just muted somebody.
Okay. All right, so I will spend a few minutes usually like refining this here. But you can drive yourself crazy, don't, because it won't make really any difference. So it's not like selecting and masking it out for any kind of composite. All right, so now we have the cat roughly selected. And what I'm gonna do is change the opacity here to, I don't know, let's be bold and say 10%. And as my flows down. And this is, you just wanna kinda,
Amy, would a normal selection tool work for this? Like, can you just select the object?
no, because you're painting, oh, you could maybe and then fill. Yeah, I haven't tried it, but I bet you could select and fill. It's worth a shot. Oops, I'll undo that. Good idea. Get the opacity down here. And like this, I learned how to do this by trial and error. So some of you who are more skilled at painting are immediately going to realize that I'm just kind of hacking my way through it. So you should be able to see if your connections are good, that the background is kind of being colored slightly orange here. So I'm telling the program, I want to pick up a little bit of this. Make sure I've got everything. All right, so that looks like a grand mess, but we're ready to go. And so then you simply select the second set of actions and let it go. And at this point, depending on the speed of your Mac or your PC, you might want to go get a cup of coffee, fix yourself a drink, maybe make a phone call. On my Mac, it takes about 5 minutes to render. And it kind of shows you the steps that it's taking and the layers that it creates. If you look down on the right here on my screen, you can see the layers kind of happening here. Oops. Or not. We'll trust that everything works out. We'll have faith. So let's return to the PowerPoint. You're just gonna have to trust that it's gonna do its thing. Okay, so at this point we've run the watercolor artist action here and we're just kind of waiting. And when it's all done, this is what we're gonna see. So this is my layers panel on the right here. You'll see the watercolor artist folder, and then you'll see a bunch of other folders down here. And each one of these is gonna have like, I don't know, 4 to 8 layers in it. And this is where you have the control over the degree of watercolorness and what the image actually looks like. So I usually edit, I usually go into image control first, outer brush strokes, sometimes spatter, and then sketch if I end up with a lot of pencil lines. So this is a place where you're going to have to experiment to find your style if you want to do this. But it doesn't take that long, a couple of days of experimenting, and you should get it. Okay, so back to Photoshop here. And it's still rendering. Oh, I do have a bunch of other things going. So, this is where we should have a quiz or something. So it seems to kind of try things out, and I don't know what the decision-making process is for what strokes get accepted and what strokes get rejected. So that looks horrible, right? It's not done yet. Almost anything that you see on here that looks like hell can be fixed. Anybody have any questions so far while this is doing its thing? Render is complete. Okay, so it gives you
Amy got a couple of questions. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead.
The name of the actions and how much are they?
The actions are free. I can take you to them, she says. Hopefully. The action itself is free. Everything is free except for the clipping masks, which are, you get 30 of them for $7.99. So,
so every time you run this action, so if you ran this action several times on this cat, would you get several different results?
It depends on how you select your subject. So I'll load the one I did. So this is the link. This is where it takes you here. Download the Watercolor Artist Action Set and Guide. If you're using Photoshop 2020, use the updated installation guide. So those are free. The watercolor brushes from DeviantArt. You just need an account for DeviantArt. I don't think I paid anything for them. This optional no paint. It's just a tutorial. There's no words on it. And then the clipping masks just takes you to an Etsy shop, and for $7.99 you get 30 clipping masks. And the clipping masks are optional. Sometimes I use them, sometimes I don't. So I don't know, I have no idea who this person is. They're from Israel. And these are the watercolor masks here. So $7.53, even cheaper, 40 cents cheaper. So as I'm looking at this, Danny, your question was, is it very different every time? This looks a lot like the one that I have in the PowerPoint. So I haven't done anything to this one yet. This is the one in the PowerPoint here. So, but I selected it the very same way. I actually had more green in the one that I did originally. So this doesn't look bad, but it doesn't look great really either. I mean, it's all right. So here's, if you look in the layers panel down on the right here, the image control one opens a bunch of layers, and the reveal details layer, I usually will duplicate that. Oops. Which doesn't do anything initially, but then I invert the mask. And that brings back almost the entire cat, but it looks too much like the photograph. So I'll reduce the opacity here. And you can see, I'll move this a little slower, sorry. Okay, so what I've done is I've selected the image control layer from the watercolor artist folder that the action generates. It's like the second one down. And I've gone down to reveal details. I duplicated that layer and then inverted the mask so that everything is revealed. And then I go up to the opacity slider and I can vary that. The greater the opacity, the more of the photograph is brought through. The lower the opacity, the less of the photograph is brought through, and the more it looks like a painting. So somewhere in there is a happy medium. And we'll leave it at, I don't know, I have it 15%. So there's all kinds of things that you can do to this, to experiment with it, to to get something that's pleasing to you. I won't go through everything. The next thing that I usually go in and look at are the outer brush strokes. So these are these kind of brush strokes that are on the outside of the actual image. And the program seems to give you 1 through 5, and then it'll calculate 6, 7, 8, and then a couple other ones. So I just kind of, I add them. I'm like, ooh, do I like that? Does that look weird? I don't know. If I like it and I don't want it in there as much, I can go up to the opacity slider and reduce the opacity. Oops, making sure I'm on the correct layer, of course. I can modify the opacity of, whoops, the stroke. And so it's just whatever you feel adds to the artistic interpretation here. And so there's 8 layers of outer brush strokes, and then there's several layers of big outer brush strokes. And this is where adding this extra color might help you on the outside. So it's picked up some of the cream color here. So maybe I'll leave that.
Amy, I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
And Eddie, if I'm saying this wrong, please jump in. Eddie Kang would like to know, is there some way you can reveal the white hair part for a little more detail? I'm not quite sure what I guess he's talking about the white.
Oh, the whiskers. You mean the whiskers?
Yes.
Yes, there is. I'll show you at the very end. I think it'll come through. Then I go into sketch. It's watercolor base sometimes too. Yeah, so the watercolor base has these splashes. So these little spatters here, you can add those. You know, if that's something that you like in a watercolor, if you feel, I don't know, it adds to the artistic interpretation here. Sketches, you can see that on the paper here, there are sketch lines here. These really don't make any sense. So I usually, because they're outlines of the blobs of paint that I added. So I usually turn them off, just kind of making sure that I'm not erasing anything that, so that third one. So the first and second one I ended up turning off. And then finally the paper. So the paper, you can see there's a texture on the paper. If I zoom in, you can see that that's an artificial texture. And the first few that I did, I left on because I wanted the digital image to look good. And I printed the image with that texture on, and I'll show you. I have a print here from Musea and prints from WHCC. And if you're printing this, I would recommend turning the texture off, like turning the paper off. Whoops, nope, not entirely. Paper 3, just removing the texture. She says, hopefully, there you go. And it doesn't look so great on the screen, but I have these printed out on Torsion Hahnemühle paper, which is a watercolor paper. And I'm gonna hold this up here. I don't know if you all can see it. The texture of the paper, this is a white print. It really does look like you applied watercolor paints to this paper. And I'm really super pleased with this. This is WHCC product. And this little 5x5 here was like, I want to say between $3 and $5. Maybe it was $5.50 to get printed. I'm going to hold this one up here. I can't see what I'm holding up here. So this is a bigger one. This was printed on decal edge paper from Musea, and it's gorgeous. I would never do it again with the paper texture here. It's really, really delicate though. And this was a $20 print. So although I really liked this for the way I'm going to be using these, this is way too expensive for me to print to give to clients. All right, so that's kind of the end of that portion. Let's go back to Photoshop or PowerPoint here. Scroll down.
Hey, Amy,
Yeah.
do you ever use Illustrator Image Trace?
No. What is that?
You could sort of do this with Illustrator Image Trace, where you copy the image, you bring in an Illustrator. You could sort of do this, sort of the same thing.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't work. You work it in Illustrator?
What you do is you copy the image, you put it in an object in Illustrator, and you
Okay.
use controls.
Oh, yeah. That sounds like it requires like artistic talent for me to do. Like
Yeah.
yeah. I do have a Wacom tablet and a pen, but I am, yeah, that's not a good idea for me. I'm good with manipulating the computer layers and things like that. I actually work with a digital artist who does absolutely fantastic work, and we get them printed and canvassed through Guild Canvas, and they're tremendous works of art. And this is in no way, shape, or form like competing with that. This is a quick thing you can do as an upsell or something. So I have no doubt that there are beautiful things you can create in Illustrator, but that is way above my pay grade. So,
Amy,
yeah.
I'm sorry. What is the name of the paper you're using again?
This is WHCC fine art. It's a fine art print, and it's Torchon, Torchon. It's a Hahnemühle paper. It's a watercolor paper. That's all I know. And I had it. This one I had printed on matte. I had it mounted on matte board. I had a bunch of them printed up, some on styrene, some on matte board, and actually I think I like the matte board better than the styrene. The price is like it's maybe $1 more on styrene. So, all right. So somebody asked about bringing the whiskers back a little bit. This is what I'm going to show you. This is the kind of the last thing that I do. I take the original layer and I place it on top of the watercolor folder, and add a layer mask and invert it. And then I use a low flow brush to paint back in important details like the eyes or the mouth. And then, excuse me, I add a curves layer and adjust it if necessary. I save everything out, all the layers and everything as a PSD file. I'll bring a clipping mask in if I want to add, like on this one, I don't know if you can see it, but it's actually, I used a heart clipping mask here because this pet was had passed, and I just kind of thought it looked special. The owner loved it, so and then I save it out as a JPEG for printing. All right, so let's head back to Photoshop here. We're on time. Okay. All right, so what I'll do here is I'll take, so I could just, if I brought Chopin in again. Or not. Maybe not. I don't know if I can open another instance of him. No, I don't think I can. Nope. All right. Well, let's do it this way though. I'll create a background layer again, and I'll bring this layer all the way up top here, which is going to make it really ugly. Create a mask, invert it. Okay. So now I'm going to take a small brush, low flow here, and paint with white and see if I can bring back, oh, that's too much. For some reason, I'm not seeing the size of my, like the size of my brush on Photoshop. Brush tool. Okay. So what I would do here is, and I'm not doing it like as neatly as I would if I could see how big the stupid brush was, but I'm adding back in the whiskers a little more here. Alternatively, you could paint them back in, or you could select them a little more in the setup phase here. But you kind of get the idea that you can bring them back in, and the brush is too big here. Does that answer your question a little bit? Whoever asked it?
He says, yeah.
Okay, all right. You would probably do this better than I did. And then one of the last things that I do is add a curves layer here up top. And I just play around with it a little bit to add some punch to it. I don't want to get rid of all the blacks and oversaturate them, but it's just a little bit. And as I go back here, like I kind of see, like I'd like a little more green in the eye, but not so much that it looks like the photograph. So this is kind of where I would leave this. I would save this out as a PSD file and then save it as a JPEG. If I wanted to, I could use a clipping mask here. If I'm going to do that, though, it works best if you flatten the image. So I'll just do that because I've already sent this off to be printed out. Let me just save this. Let's go to hidden layers. And then I'd open the clipping masks. These I have saved here, and these are PNG files, and you can see here, here's the heart one that I used. Oh, maybe I used this one. You want to choose one that kind of is the same shape as your image. Let's try this one. Okay. And we'll bring this in here. Drop it. Oh, sorry, backwards. Yeah, that didn't do a whole lot. So you could leave it like this as transparent here. You could flatten the image. Let's go to hidden layers. Yep, that's good. Didn't really do much. And this is how I'd send it off to print. Okay, so I'd save that out as JPEG and then send it off. All right, so just find the details. Printing and presentation. All right. So there's the business end of this. All right. So like I said before, I had them printed originally on this Musea Decal Edge. This is 100% cotton paper, 350 gram. It's about $20 a print. And while it was really nice, I don't generally supply people with prints. So I liked framed artwork. So then I had it printed on this WHCC torchon paper. This is a fine art print. If you just go into their rows and select fine art prints, torchon comes up. So I guess this was, 8 by 8 is 650. This is like 5 something. All right, so then I sourced frames and mats would align with my brand. Okay, and I came up with this. I don't know if y'all can see this. This is the same 5x5 print here. That's in a frame. It's an all wood frame with a double mat. It's a float mat. It's maybe not as nice as I would like, but it looks pretty nice. So this whole thing is an 8x8 here, and it's a fairly cheap frame. It's probably, I don't know. I got it off of Amazon. Took me like 30 seconds to assemble, and then I bought. Coated wire, D-ring hangers, and little rubber bumpers. And I'm going to drill some pilot holes on the back here. I'm going to cut paper and glue it along here and put a sticker on the back with my my watermark and logo and contact information, and present this as a ready to hang something or other. It probably would take all this stuff on the back off here. I don't have the one that so this is the other one here. So these are both going out, these are both going out to clients. And I have an 8x8 that's going out to someone else who just sent me a picture of their dog and asked if I could, there's a dog that died recently, and come to find out, her dad is a vet and runs a company, some kind of a pet supply company called From Home to Heaven, that specializes in memorials for pets that have passed. And they asked me if I would be a featured artist for their website. So that was an interesting marketing opportunity for me. If you're going to use these, practice a lot, get the process down so that it doesn't take you much time to do, because they really don't. Source your vendors for the prints and the frames that align with your brand. I'd be happy to send you the link from Amazon that I used for these. I also found double mats that were not float mount mats that would fit inside here. It just increases the price a little bit and keep your cost of goods down. Get test prints. Determine the price point, the value for marketing purposes. And I just offer to create these for clients in exchange for testimonials, because everybody loves testimonials that you can use in your website. And I made sure to mention the value of them. And I offered them complimentary in exchange for testimonials. And I've got 5 or so testimonials that I can use on my website.
So, Amy, quick question for you. Somebody is asking, if you spray the print with varnish, you don't need to mat it. I can't read this. If you spray the print with varnish, you don't need the mat or glass, just an appropriate frame. Okay, that's a comment. And then the other one is, what do you value something like this at? How do you know your cost of goods? What's your value of this?
Yeah, so normally I would offer this, if I was going to sell this, like as a one-off, I was going to offer this as a one-off thing to clients, it'd be $199 for me, and this 5x5 size. And that's based on the amount of time that it took me to make it, what I want to make per hour, my cost of goods. If I charge $199 for it, I subtract about $25 to $28 cost of goods. I figure it's about an hour of my time for making it, for preparing all of these things, and for packaging it back up. So that's another like 30 or 40 bucks I'm gonna pay myself, and then I gotta take taxes out of that. So I think after that, I end up with like 50 or 60 bucks of profit after I pay myself. So, but that's my pricing strategy. You know, if you were Sterling Hoffman, this would be a $500 thing all day long. So, examples of how you might use these. I'm a pet photographer. These are watercolors that I've created for clients, and everybody's been thrilled with them. More thrilled than I thought they would be, which is why I decided to pursue this a little bit. I'm planning on offering these as a value add or an incentive to purchase up. It's not something that I'm going to offer as a standalone product, because I just don't feel I could like make any money doing that. which is why I really wanted to figure out the process and make it quick and keep the cost of goods down. If you are not a pet photographer, if you are into real estate, or you want to get into real estate, this is a picture of the house that I live in. And I just gave this as a gift to the people, the family that I live with. And this might make a nice client gift for a real estate agent, and might be a value add if you're a real estate photographer, if you can do something like this for your real estate clients. If you are an auto enthusiast, one of my friends, Max Crago, is an auto classic car photographer. So I grabbed one of his photos with his permission and asked if I could create an image of one of his trucks that he'd photographed. And this might make a nice client image as a gift to a client, maybe holiday cards. Certainly the pets might make holiday cards, as well as the real estate might make holiday cards. So, and I'm sure that I've only scratched the surface for marketing possibilities. So that brings us to the end here. How am I doing? Oh, I'm doing great. We're just coming up to our hour. And I just want to let you know that tools for this are readily available. The image quality is not a really big concern. Some of the photos that I've worked with have been really horrible cell phone photos. Once it's rendered, you have like the ultimate control to adjust this for your custom style. It is possible to print these and present them in a way that you can minimize your costs and have it align with your brand. And hopefully I've given you a couple of ideas for marketing strategies. Questions, comments, witticisms, criticisms?
You guys want to open up your mics and ask Amy some questions?
Yeah.
Go right ahead. Anybody? Bueller?
Ferris Bueller.
Nobody's. I guess everybody's happy, Amy.
Either that or they're sound asleep. So
Yeah. All right, I'm
That's
gonna.
interesting. Thank you for sharing, especially on the marketing side.
Oh, yeah. I always am thinking about the business here, and I'd love to discuss this more with people if we want to like open the conversation up to or the Facebook group or anything. I'm happy to participate.
Have you done it with human portraits to see what they look like?
Yeah, I have. So I have an example of that, but it's not. So let me see if I can open it up here. I think I'm still sharing my screen. Okay, can you see that?
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
that's my dad and my stepmom, and that's from a very nice portrait I did of them last summer, and it's okay. It's one of my first attempts, and they weren't like overly thrilled by it. So, like, oh.